at your own startup, right? You have a conversation with Jonathan about merging. I was an investor in Cerebras, which is also building a fast inference chip. Grok was building a fast inference chip. These two companies had been in existence for upwards of 10 years. And the extraordinary thing is, like, in year 9, they're both fighting for survival. They're not thriving, right? Like they're building for a market that didn't really exist. Okay, but you saw something. You know, Jensen came on my podcast, BG2.
Over 40% of your revenue today is inference. But inference is about ready because of chain of reasoning. Right? It's about
to go up by 1 billion times.
Right, by a million X, by a billion X.
That's right. That's the part that most people haven't completely internalized. This is that industry we were talking about, Bud. This is the Industrial Revolution.
I remember you and I had a conversation, and shortly thereafter, you helped broker, kind of this vision for Jonathan that said, Jonathan, I think I see your future more clearly than you do. So tell us about that moment.
Yeah, I think, at that moment, a couple things are happening, right? So the market had been dominated by NVIDIA because NVIDIA is what the researchers use to create the models. And so naturally, in part of creating a model, inference is the forward pass of training, right? In the back prop, that's what's different. And so you're always doing inference when you're creating models. And so it's very natural to just run it on the same hardware that you've created the model on. And so one of the things that, we saw with the Grok architecture was that we could complete inference much more efficiently, right? And so if you look at our V1 chip, which we, put into the cloud, and I'll get back to it in a second, that's a silicon designed in 2018, silicon from 2019, 14 nanometer, and super competitive against Hoppers, right? Which is, 5 generations newer in terms of silicon technology. And so really what we saw was we thought it would be very difficult for convincing people to buy our hardware and use it. But if we built a cloud and put it in the cloud, developers really don't care, right? If there's an API. And developers, we've seen they're quite fungible there. So our big insight was take these things, start putting them in the cloud, run the data centers, and make them available via an API, and make the best open source models available for everyone. And even including OpenAI models, like OpenAI had Whisper, which was open source from the beginning. And so we had put a lot of those models there, and that's what really took off. And we launched the cloud, and within a few weeks, we went to a couple 100,000 users, and today it's like something at 4 million users. And it took NVIDIA almost 17 years to get to 7 million users.